This sway presentation introduces you to the images I would like you to think about for paper number 2, particularly if you would like to use Patricia Hill Collins's article as your supporting evidence. The title of the sway is the second paper, Feminist Analysis and a Cultural Object. The feminist analysis will be Patricia Hill Collins in this particular example. And the cultural object, although Hill Collins refers to several in her article, will be some items that I chose. However, before we begin looking at the cultural objects I selected for you, I want to show you some of the examples that Hill Collins refers to in her article. And this first is a woman from South Africa named Sarji Bartman, or Sarah Bartman, and she lived in the 1800s. She had a very unusual body type. So a man from England took her to Europe from South Africa and basically traveled around with her as a traveling show to display her body, because people in Europe paid money and were fascinated to see this African woman. Hill Collins argues that the reason this African woman's body was worth paying to see was that its difference from the imagined white body or European woman's body exemplified the difference between black and white. Therefore, it helped to define racism and racialized sexuality by parading around this very unusual example of a black woman and claiming that her body developed as such because she was a more sexual being and not the same kind of human being or the same species perhaps as a white woman. So this is a really horrendous example of how racism set the stage for justifying slavery and the mistreatment of people of African descent. Patricia Hill Collins in 2000 wrote a wonderful essay, wonderful yet disturbing, called Controlling Images, in which she described the 4 major types of stereotypes that black women had to face in American culture. And in black sexual politics, she takes Sarah Bartman, Josephine Baker, Destiny's Child, and J-Lo as examples of black women whose sexuality falls under the scrutiny and gaze of white supremacy. So, for example, here is J-Lo with Shakira, and Shakira, the Lebanese Latino woman, gets fetishized for her hips. J-Lo receives a lot of media attention for her buttocks, and similarly, although Destiny's Child Survivor made a lot of money, and the lyrics from that album often claimed tremendous agency or self-control or self-determination for the young women in Destiny's Child at that time, Hill Collins points out that the image of black women in animal skins goes back to the connection to Sarah Bartman, that they're more voracious and that there's a stereotype of them being more sexual, just like J-Lo's butt or Shakira's hips connect them to Sarji Bartman's buttocks. And to Hill Collins, this is an example of the ways that black women get sexualized and hypersexualized differently than white women. So here is our example from Elle magazine, and it is from October this month. And initially, these particular black women in this editorial shoot don't look that unusual. The only unusual thing about the shoot is that, as you can see, there's often a shadow, so it's as if someone is revealing them or finding them in the dark and shining a light on them. But the images become stranger and stranger as you go through all of the examples. Sorry, I'm trying to just make that go away. So when you think about Hill Collins' discussion of Black women being represented as animalistic, we can look at this example where she has feathers connected to her eyes. And in this example, again, we have that strange shadow and a very almost aggressive seeming predatory face. But you have to look at the entire photo shoot to start to get the idea of the strangeness of it. In this, I think she looks perhaps somewhat snake-like with those very pointy eyes and the kind of triangular head of a venomous snake in her sheath-like dress. This, I don't really know what to say about it, but maybe you have something to say. Now, whereas these two don't look particularly animalistic, unless she's some kind of a bird or a flower, the disappearance of the arms is kind of strange in both of these pictures. So, is this a woman or a frog? She's kind of frog-shaped, and I don't know exactly what's happening here. Here is a close-up of the woman's peacock eyes. But then where it starts to get a little bit more disturbing is in these images, which actually kind of scared my children. Maybe we have here the flamingo woman and here a more bird-like image of a woman, but she's wearing this jewelry on her face that makes her look even less human. It's almost like a beak, and it covers over her nose. And forgive me while I try for a second to figure out where the close-up, there it is. There is the close-up of that woman. Let me see if I can make this a little larger for you. So do these pictures support Patricia Hill Collins' argument that it's more common for Black women to get photographed or be in photo shoots if they look like they have an animalistic, wild, perhaps more predatory side? Or are these pictures just art? Are Black women now represented with greater agency? And is there a way to look at these images and see Black womanhood that isn't sexualized differently than white women in advertisements? The rest of the assignment for the paper is in your folders, and there you will find lots of explanation of Hill Collins's argument to help you with this paper. And I look forward to reading your example.